Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. Some progress is being made in coming to an understanding between the government and NSCN-IM in the latest round of informal Naga peace talks, media outlets have reported. These, however, are informal talks and official deliberations with the government will follow after this round. According to media reports, officials of the Intelligence Bureau have been engaging with the NSCN-IM after relations between R N Ravi, the centre's interlocutor for the peace talks, and also the Nagaland Governor and leaders of NSCN-IM soured last year, and the talks ended in a stalemate. In this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the Naga Conundrum. Joining me on the program today are John Shilshi, retired IPS officer, Gautam Sen, former advisor, Government of Nagaland, and Joyeeta Bhattacharjee, Senior Fellow, Observer Research Foundation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Sen, I'd like to begin the program with you. Let's first try and understand and analyze the history of this problem, because this is not something new. This is a decades-old problem, and we've been trying to find a solution for it. Of late, over the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen some progress really in trying to see some kind of, some kind of a solution as far as the problem is concerned.
You see, I'll put it like this. The problem has persisted for quite some time. That is why the problem, what it was in the late 80s and 90s, and how it has evolved or not changed in the last few years, particularly since the framework agreement was concluded or decided upon, are quite different. So, tracing the history is one thing, but point is the ground realities have changed phenomenally. Basically, the problem is not as it used to be before, that, the armed confrontation, people have to put in camps and, disarming the cadres and all those things are there. But it's more a question of accommodating the Naga aspirations within the Indian framework. Now, I really feel that perhaps there's a realization on both sides that time is running out. The more it gets prolonged, you will meander through and may not reach the ultimate objective. And I don't think that, that forceful aspiration to separate out a separate identity. But that does not mean that you will not treat the Naga community or the various groups of the Naga community as a distinct ethnic identity with a great lineage and a past proud history. So once that sort of acceptance is there on the part of the Indian Union and the Government of India and the Indian people at large, and then the other side also, I think, will be amenable to arriving in an accord. So I'll put it like this to start with.
Right. So, Mr. Shilshi, let me bring you into the picture now. There have been several groups from Nagaland. There have been splinter groups as well. There have been some divisions really as far as these groups are concerned. But right now, the talks seem to be focused on the NSCN-IM and the central government. So, who are all the players that continue to exist at this point in time, and what is the situation like?
Yes, thank you, Frank. Actually, yes, I fully agree with what Mr. Sen has said in his opening remarks. As far as the players are concerned, actually there are so many. Every stakeholder in this peace talk between the Government of India and the NSCN-IM, they're all players, in some form or the other. The Naga population, the Naga society at large, and also the other societies, such as where the people from the state of Manipur or Arunachal or Assam, everybody is a stakeholder. Therefore, I think everyone is no doubt a player in this ongoing talk. But let me tell you one thing. More than the players, I think what is a little bit worrying now, as of now, is the circumstances that led to the recent stalemate. I will dwell a little bit into 3rd of August 2015. There were certain things which the Prime Minister has said during that function, which is actually not a closed door function, but it's an open function where the whole international community was also watching. And in that, Prime Minister has said very, very important things, which are actually music to the ears of the Naga leaders particularly. Things like, mutual respect and trust and confidence. And also he said that he gave a little bit of his idea about how the Naga problem has prolonged, and in that he has added that it was a heritage, or rather it was a legacy of the colonial past. And he mentioned two important words: isolation and insulation. He said the Nagas have been isolated for too long and they have been kept insulated. You know, this was very, very important remark that Prime Minister made, I thought, on that very day. And Muiva's response, Mr. Muiva, when he spoke, let's remember one thing. Mr. Muiva is a very, very tall leader. He's a very hard nut to crack as far as his ideologies are concerned. But on that day, what he said if the Indians are willing to accept the Naga reality, one reality of the Nagas, the Nagas are willing to accept 10 realities of the Indians' problem. So I thought this was a very, very important development as far as these two, remarks made by the Prime Minister as well as Mr. Muiva was concerned. And the outcome of this confidence building we were seeing over the last, from 2015, 16, 17 onwards, we were seeing so much of progress was made. When I say progress was made, I am not saying that we are privy to the top. We are not, none of us are privy to the top. However, the body language, the kind of messages which is coming out from these two groups were indications that there was so much of progress made. Progress made means what? It's most importantly, compromises were made in order to see that some kind of solution is brought into being. So I think how it all changes, the entire thing changes in August 2019 onwards. This needs deeper analysis rather than who are the players. As of today, the players are actually the NSCN-IM, the NNPG, and the government of India on the other side. Of course, the Naga society. But more importantly, I think we need to analyze the post-August 2019 situation. That's how I will look at it.
Okay, we'll analyze that and we'll get into that as well in just a bit. But let me go back to a point that Mr. Sen was making. Joyeeta, let me take that up with you. So, is the Naga cause still relevant as it was a few years ago today? Because he spoke about how in the 80s and 90s it was a different kind of an atmosphere, a different kind of the leaders were still young, they were still dynamic, they were still aggressive. But today, these very old, very same leaders like Mr. Muiva that Mr. Shilshi spoke about is now old, is now probably looking at some kind of a closure as far as this issue is concerned, because he's tired of fighting as well. So is it still relevant, the cause, and is it still the same today?
I think we really have to understand that Naga conflict or peace process is very long drawn. But it's already 2 decades, and in last 2 decades, the society changes, and there has been a significant change, not only in India, but also in Naga society. People have started coming out, they have started enjoying the world altogether. So I think the choices and priorities have also changed, and the realities are much more different today. So considering that there has been a severe change, and I think the leadership also recognizes this. And this is why we see so much of change and the positive that has emerged. So it is, but still, I think, when there is change, but there are issues, and those are the core realities that we really have to recognize. It may not be a greater Naga separate sovereignty issue or something, but there are aspirations of the Naga people, their identity. And those issues, how we can accommodate those aspirations, because end of the day, these people, they have fought for many years, and they are also looking for a proper exit to the situation. But when we are talking about a solution, we really have to find a level playing ground, and we should think, but the situation have changed definitely.
Okay, the situation has changed a lot. Everyone is looking for an honorable exit, and a level playing field is what Joyeeta is suggesting. Mr. Sen, let me bring you into the picture now. So, what is the sentiment of the people on the ground, in 2020 today, after, holding the flag up for several decades now, 7 decades, now in 2020, generations have passed by, like Joyeeta has suggested. Is the sentiment on the ground in Nagaland still the same for the Naga cause?
No. I would certainly agree with my colleagues on the panel, and Dr. Bhattacharjee was very clear. And I also feel that the sentiment on the ground is that if I were there, people would ask, what is happening? Why are we not reaching the end? And the point is, there's no question of going back to the 60s, 70s, 80s and all that. The sentiment on the ground is that we have to stay how we are as part of the Indian framework. But within the framework, how will you accommodate my self-respect, my identity, the question of shared sovereignty and whatnot? These are all impinging on that concept. So that is the issue which have to be resolved with a little bit of, I would put it, maybe in a rather blunt way, that with a large heart, in the sense that we may not see the Naga ethnic issue or the Naga issue as such as on the same platform as we do in other parts of the country, or we don't have this sort of a problem in other parts of the country. So this is the crux of the matter. I look at it from that angle. And so far that, integration of the Naga area, I think this has become much more manageable now. It is manageable. But the question of self-respect and shared identity, how will you accommodate this within the Indian framework? Or would you like to, bring about some amendment to the Indian constitutional structure without diluting the national unity and integrity? These are the prime issues which will have to be resolved. And once they are resolved, it will be fast flowing to the future accommodation, and things will be different. More than economics, I think this is the crux of the issue which will have to be resolved.
Okay. Let me take the point that Mr. Sen is making forward with you, Mr. Shilshi, and also bring in another aspect and another angle to it as well. So first and foremost, what has enabled the coming together of the warring factions to the negotiating table? What has led to this present situation right now? What are some of the contentious issues that continue to persist and that are still a problem?
Well, before I begin, what are the contentious issues? I would like to just make a small remark with regards in response to my two colleagues who have mentioned about the changes that we see in the Naga society. No doubt, as far as development, as far as education, as far as coming out to the rest of the Indian society and mixing with them is concerned, it's very much there. It's not the same old system where the Nagas are, they continue to be isolated, they continue to be on their own. But one fact we need to remember, actually, from the ground reality is that because of the long history of the fight that Nagas have been indulging into, and however educated they are, however, vertical mobility they might have acquired in their life, have been able to manage in their life, the sentiment remains the same. Therefore, the most contentious issue, which is of the constitution and the flag, is actually in the minds of everybody. If you see today, this is no exaggeration. You talk to a university professor there in JNU, somebody who is teaching in Washington, someone in UK, you ask anybody, they will say that the flag and the constitution are core to the Naga identity and Naga dignity. Why? One of the reasons is that for decades, a day before 1940, India actually hoisted their national flag in 1947. One day before, this flag, the symbolic flag, was hoisted by the Nagas, and from that onwards, the progress was continuing, and you find that every year, every important function of the Nagas, these flags are being hoisted. Not much about the constitution. Constitution more of a political and, of course, the leaders to manage. But the flag, I think, is much more dear to their heart. So I think, as far as the Nagas are concerned, irrespective of how much they have become or how much they have opened out, this sentimental issue of flag is always going to be there in their minds, and therefore today, as we are seeing rightly, most of the problems, even the delay in the finalization of the talk, actually had emerged because of these two issues of constitution and a flag. So as of now, these are the main issues. I think the rest of the thing that, like Mr. Sen has said, the rest of the issues actually, as far as integration, physical integration, possible, not possible, all these are actually, I think it is understood that they have worked out on this one. But these 2 points that I mentioned are the one, and they are actually the main problems which is pulling back to some extent the progress of the talk.
Absolutely. Okay, Joyeeta, Bhattacharjee, let me bring you in now. As far as the talks are concerned, we're talking about the talks. So, what is the present status of the talks as of now?
I think, as we all know, the process is on, and the negotiations are on. But still, I think the talks are continuing. We can't continue for forever. It's already 23 years on, and we really and I certainly feel that there should be a solution to the situation. But also, I feel that looking into the history of talks, it's not that all of a sudden we are talking. There has been a history, and there has been peace processes going on. So what will be the outcome? That is because we are signing with one group, and then it happened in 1960s. There has been peace process and peace accord again in 1970s, and then we see this. So how far we can have a proper solution, it is a big issue. So here I strongly feel that it's not only looking into NSCN-IM, we need to engage with the entire Naga society, because there are very facets and there are views also. So it's very important if we really want a lasting solution, because I strongly feel that Naga problem is the longest going problem, and it needs a lasting solutions. So looking into the history, we really have to take that perspective to get in a proper way, and much more effort is necessary to bring it in a proper lasting solution that I would like to see.
Right, absolutely. We'll talk about solutions, we'll talk about what needs to be done really and what we can see happening in the near future. But before that, Mr. Sen, I'm going to go back to a point that Mr. Shilshi was making in his opening remarks about how we need to analyze and understand what has transpired since August 2019. What were some of the issues? We've seen a lot of talk being made about the, interlocutor and so on and so forth. So what went wrong, do you think, and do you believe that, talks are presently in a stalemate as a result of that?
You see, first of all, this is my personal opinion exclusively. You see, I know Mr. R N Ravi very well. He's incidentally my IPS batchmate. But the point is, governor and interlocutor rolled into one is perhaps not the most ideal solution. Because governor is a constitutional authority and represents the government of India in the last district. Now the point is, and Dr. Bhattacharjee made the point that we have to take everybody along, the entire society. NSCN-IM is definitely will be the prime content of that, but there will be the others. And I wonder if the church, I'm not too sure what role the church is going to play or is playing. Regarding the present controversy, I've already mentioned my opinion. But the thing is, the broadening this without undermining the NSCN-IM would be a pragmatic approach. And the church definitely should play rather more proactive role as a bridge maker in that way. And present state government, of course, is just part of a structure. It doesn't have much of a role to play. And this is rather unfortunate, if I may say so. But the society enlargement and then the church leadership, I would like them to come to the forefront. That may help to a better understanding, to evolving a broader consensus, and the issues which are looming, that will be perhaps taken care of better.
Right. So, Mr. Shilshi, So let's talk about solutions now. And what is likely to happen? What do you believe is going to be a good lasting solution? Something that Joyeeta Bhattacharjee was pointing out as well, that we need to have something that is lasting. You can't just have something that is temporary in nature, because this issue has gone on for long enough. So what needs to be done?
Yes, in fact, there is urgency. If you ask me, there's an urgency to complete the talk somehow or the other. Because what happens is, the more it drags, more and more problems will be associated with it, and then whatever points that you have agreed upon already may also become some kind of sure in due course of time. So I think it is necessary that it must resume, the talk must resume between the two parties as quickly as possible. For that, different people have to play a positive role. The government of India needs to understand why they are having a problem, why the opposite party is having a problem. And then secondly, to think of any permanent solution, we must remember one thing. Fractions of solutions with some splinter groups, one group, maybe let's say you leave out NSCN-IM and sign with somebody else, or the vice versa if you do. This will be the biggest mistake India will be committing. I would say that if there has to be a solution, it has to be comprehensive, it should be agreeable to at least not, as of now, at least the two groups, that is the NNPG and the NSCN-IM. Otherwise, what will happen is, suppose if you sign something, the history will get repeated. What we saw in 1964, what we have seen in 1975, and like that, the history will again be repeated. There will be no end to Naga problem. So somehow or the other, the solution has to be found. And I must also say one thing. In a solution, in trying to find a solution as this, which is very, very tricky and dicey, I think it is prudent that, the bigger party, the bigger partner in this negotiation must have the bigger heart. And in this case, the bigger party is the government of India, definitely. Therefore, the government of India is expected to have a bigger heart than the NSCN-IM. And look out for some solution which will be permanent in nature. Otherwise, we are never going to see a permanent solution if splinter groups are taken and agreements are signed.
Absolutely. And Joyeeta Bhattacharjee, let me go back to a point that Mr. Sen was making about the role of the church, and how can the church in Nagaland, we know that the church is very strong in Nagaland, can the church play a proactive role in trying to bring about some kind of a solution to the problem there?
Definitely. I think for any kind of solution, the society plays a very, very big role. And we have seen the role of church already in the peace process. So definitely it's important we rope in all actors, and since church has a bigger influence in the society, it will be important to see and bring in all expertise. I think we should involve all avenues we have and understanding, so that I strongly believe a comprehensive solution is necessary. So whatever is necessary that can bring peace to Nagaland that should be our main focus.
All right, time to get quick closing comments now from all my guests with the best way forward, starting first with you, Mr. Sen.
The best way forward should be, as my colleagues have already articulated, to take the entire society along. And here, as my other colleague mentioned, the big brother, or the Indian Union, the government of India, they have to be a little flexible, and without diluting any aspects to Indian integrity, it is possible. And the Indian Constitution can surely accommodate some innovative solution. I would look forward to that. That is the way out. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Shilshi.
Yes, the best way forward, in my opinion, is that first of all, the prevailing trust deficit has to be removed, and so as to ensure that the talk doesn't break down. And second important point that I want to make is that when a negotiation as this one, as important as this one is going on, I think the posturing to say, to send a message which Nagas actually are thinking today is happening. Like, for example, the use of firepower and the military might that India has, by running after cadres and things like that should not happen. No doubt, when there are people, indulging in criminal activities, the law of the land must take its own course. But at the same time, having said that, I think overdrive, must not be considered as an option, because that is sending a wrong message, and the confidence which was already built seems to be diminishing because of that.
Right. And Joyeeta, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Definitely, I will agree with my previous panelists that confidence building is very necessary. And with confidence, I think both sides should come together and develop understanding. So, little give and take together so that we can have a lasting solution.
All right. On that note, then, I'll call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is that a lot of progress has been made since August 2015. But what's also important to note is to understand what has transpired since August 2019. All players are looking for an honorable exit and are looking for some respect. The Constitution and flag are the two main and contentious issues as far as the Government of India and Nagaland are concerned. Other issues are more or less sorted out and do not continue to persist. Engage with the entire Naga community if you want a lasting solution. We need a comprehensive solution that is agreeable to all. Only then will we have a lasting solution. The bigger party, that is the Government of India, must have a bigger heart, is what the panelists are suggesting, and be a little flexible without compromising, of course, on national integrity. With that, it's a wrap. See you again next time.